Thank you for getting up early with us. Look, you're in a state that understands what it's like for people to flee their country. You understand what it's like for people who feel they have to reestablish a life somewhere else. Not all of them necessarily fleeing war, but fleeing what they feel is a dangerous situation. So let me ask you first that in terms of the tragedy, the humanitarian tragedy we're seeing unfold, Congresswoman, and yes, we have support teams there. Yes, we've provided many millions of dollars in aid. Yes, you just heard the Secretary of State talking about the U.S. Welcome Center and the services that they provide. And temporary protected status has been given to Ukrainians here in the United States. But is that enough? I spoke to a young woman yesterday who happened to be visiting her family in Ukraine. She and her mother fled with their lives. Her father and brother are still there under attack. She wants to be able to bring her mother home with her to Chicago. Are we doing enough to help with this refugee crisis? Should we be accepting refugees?
Well, Chris, thank you for having me. I will tell you that I have had a sickening knot in my stomach for the last week. This is just an unprecedented atrocity in the 21st century for a nuclear power like Russia to launch an unprovoked invasion with no threat whatsoever to their country or their citizens' well-being is there aren't words in the dictionary to describe the depth of the horror and outrage that Putin has unleashed. And you're right, I do represent a community that has really tens of thousands of people who have fled countries and that are autocracies that brutalize their own people. And the concern in our part of the Western Hemisphere is that Putin is lurking in the shadows in countries like Cuba and Venezuela, propping up dictators. And, you know, the advance that he is engaged in now is threatening the region there. And you potentially are going to see other countries, if we don't stop his advance, other countries jeopardized as well. And we feel that over here, not only from my constituents who fled situations like this, but also because Putin really has very aggressive ambitions. And I strongly believe that President Biden has really unified the world. I'm thankful about the sanctions that are just the beginning, and we are going to continue to make this as horrendously painful for Putin and his economy and sadly his people, whom he doesn't care about, so that we can make sure that he rolls back out of Ukraine.
But specifically to those refugees, do you think that we need to reconsider whether or not we let some of those refugees into the United States? Do we need to open our borders the way we have seen so many European countries, even, you know this well, countries that have had a very difficult relationship with refugees coming into their country who are now saying we are accepting these people with open arms? Does the United States need to try to do more for these refugees?
We are doing more. I know that I get calls from constituents who have relatives in Ukraine in my office every single day, and we are working closely with the immigration services and the State Department to try to bring those people who are in danger, who have familial ties here, to the United States. Like I said, I'm confident that our humanitarian assistance is really only at its early stages, and that the United States will continue under President Biden to rally the world to isolate Putin and continue to make him marginalize him for the pariah that he is.
There are some of your colleagues on the Hill, as you know, who are going to be meeting via teleconference with President Zelensky. Earlier this morning, he was touting the fact that there were these humanitarian corridors that were established in 2 cities in Ukraine already in Mariupol. The city council there, and now one of the officials in the Ukrainian government is confirming that they say Russia has breached its ceasefire. Look, that's not, as you know, necessarily a big surprise. Ceasefires are very difficult to hold under war conditions. But given that, what would you anticipate that conversation to be like? I mean, I think a logical conclusion will be that President Zelensky will get on the phone and make his case again, perhaps even more forcefully than he did after the breach of the nuclear facility, and say, we need you to help us establish a no-fly zone. We need more now from you, from NATO, and from the United States.
Well, this week we are getting ready to appropriate $10 billion in emergency aid to Ukraine, which will include military and humanitarian assistance. And, you know, Chris, the issue of the no-fly zone, you know, the protector in me, I'm a woman who, on both sides of my family, my great-grandparents emigrated from what was then Russia, but is Kiev and Odessa. So I have familial ties, you know, over the last generations to this region. It breaks my heart. But in this day and age, with Russia being a nuclear power, the United States being a nuclear power, our NATO allies, you know, in a no-fly zone situation, as Secretary Blinken said yesterday, my instinct is, yes, we should do that. We should do everything we can. And then you take a step back and realize that we would likely end up in World War III, because if you establish a no-fly zone, then inevitably we're going to be in a position where the United States and our NATO allies would be shooting down Russian planes. And the consequences of that, even though that would be deserved, are really have to be thought through and would be devastating. So other than that, at the moment, we have to make sure, because we cannot launch World War III. I mean, I think everybody has to really take a step back and pause and think about what the impact of that would be. What we do have to do is do everything we can to put a chokehold on Putin himself and continue to make sure that the Ukrainian people have resources that they need, militarily and especially, so that they can fight back. Their bravery has been remarkable. I'm very pleased to see that Poland, which has had some rule of law issues of late, is stepping up in a significant way and being the refuge that they need, and that NATO allies need to be. I think the story is just unfolding, and we need to make sure that we do everything we can to help the Ukrainian people who have the resolve and the resilience to defend themselves be able to push back Putin out of their borders.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, thank you so much. We appreciate you being with us this morning, and we'll be right back.